Roof preparation. The roof deck must be a minimum 15 and 32 seconds APA plywood, or 7/16 OSB. The plywood must be properly spaced to allow for expansion. In order for DaVinci Shake and Slate to lay flat, it is critical that the roof deck is clean of debris and that the surface is flat. Any decking flaws will affect the final appearance of the roof. Flashing. Once the roof deck is deemed flat and clean, an eaves flashing or drip edge made from copper, coated steel, or aluminum should be installed on the bottom perimeter of the roof. In areas where ice damming is possible, ice and water shields should be installed on the bottom eave of the roof and extend at least 2 feet above the plate line. Ice and water shields should be installed in all valleys regardless of climate. Additionally, if the roof pitch is less than 4 and 12, ice and water shield is required over the entire roof. Underlayments. Once the ice and water shield is installed, an underlayment should be installed starting at the eaves and working to the top. A minimum 30-pound felt underlayment is required. Please refer to the DaVinci installation instructions for the specific underlayment required to achieve a Class A fire rating. Gable flashing. Once the underlayment has been installed, flashing should be installed on all gable ends. We recommend a D-style edging or overhanging drip edge. This edging should be made from copper, coated metal, or aluminum. Starter tile. DaVinci starter tiles should be installed once the underlayment and eaves flashing is in place. The starter tile should be installed with the DaVinci logo on top. The starter should overhang the drip edge approximately 1 inch. It is very important that the starter tiles be spaced 3/8 of an inch apart, as tiles will expand when warm. Each starter tile should be nailed with 2 nails on a line approximately 6 inches from the butt and 3/4 of an inch from each edge. Valleys. Valley metal should be W valley with a standing seam diverter down the middle, or a double W with a break in the middle and standing seams diverters on either side. The decision on which valley metal should be used will be based on whether a closed or open valley is preferred. DaVinci Slate and Shakes have an open rib structure, and the standing seam in the different valley types will mask this rib structure. For an open valley, the double W is used where the cut tile are butted to the diverter on each side of the valley. If a closed valley is chosen, the tiles are butted to the diverter in the middle of the valley. Field slates. Now that the starter tiles are in place, it is time to install the field slates. The tiles may be installed in straight or staggered coursing. We will start first with the straight coursing installation. DaVinci slate bundles have tiles of 5 different widths. Depending on the color blend, those tiles may all be one color or different colors. The tiles of different widths and sometimes different colors are evenly distributed throughout the bundle. There are 6 of each of the 5 widths in each bundle, and every bundle is the same. Starting at the bottom left for a right-handed roofer, any slate width may be chosen for the first slate except the 12-inch slate. The reason that a 12-inch slate may not be used is that the starter tile is also 12 inches. There must be a minimum 1.5 inch offset from the gaps between the starter tiles and the gaps between the slates. The slate is installed directly on top of the starter tile, with the butt of the slate and the butt of the starter tile flush with one another. After the first slate is installed, the next slate installed may be any width as long as the offset between the gaps is 1.5 inches or more. This same rule applies to all subsequent courses of slates. The gaps between slates may never be aligned with those of gaps between slates of adjacent courses. In fact, the offset must be a minimum 1.5 inches, and spacing between tiles should be 3/8 of an inch. The slates must be installed with 2 corrosion-resistant roofing nails. Stainless steel, copper, or hot-dip galvanized nails are recommended. Nails may be hand-nailed or driven with a coil gun. Staples are not approved fasteners. When attaching the slates, special care should be used to make sure that the nails are driven flush with the top of the slate. Overdriving the nails or driving the nails on an angle will prevent the slates from laying flat, and the slates on top will lift. The installation can proceed with either a straight or staggered course installation. For a straight course installation, the slates may be laid at a 7.5 inch exposure if the roof pitch is 6'12" or greater. For a 7.5 inch exposure, the installer would lay the first course of slates with their butts laid flush with the bottom edge of the starter. Each subsequent course of slates is laid exposing the slate 7.5 inches to the weather. This is achieved by aligning the 7.5 inch mark on each slate with the tip of the slate below it. An alternate alignment method is using horizontal chalk lines to align the slates. For this method, the installer snaps a chalk line 7.5 inches above the tips of the first course of slates, or 25.5 inches above the butts of the first course. A chalk line can then be added every 7.5 inches, all the way to the ridge line if wanted. Once the chalk lines are in place, the installation continues by placing the tips of the slates on the chalk line and choosing the proper width of slate that will assure there is a minimum 1.5 inches between the joints of slates on adjacent courses. The slates should be laid as they come out of the bundle. Not every slate will fit, so you may have to take a second or third slate from the top to assure proper side lap. A rack-type system should be used, also known as rack style, stair-stepping, or pyramiding. This will prevent same-size slate from being laid directly on top of another. If a staggered application is required, the slates must be laid at a 7-inch exposure if the roof pitch is 6'12" or greater, or at a 6-inch exposure if the roof pitch is less than 6'12". If the 7-inch exposure is used, the horizontal chalk line should be laid 7 inches above the tips of the first course of slate, 25 inches from the butt. All subsequent lines are chalked at 7-inch intervals. For staggered coursing, every other slate has their tip laid on the chalk line, while the alternate slate tips are placed approximately 1 inch below the line. Whether installing straight or staggered coursing, the installation of the field tiles will continue until you reach a gable, valley, hip, or abutment. When a gable is reached, it is preferred that you do not cut any tiles. When you get approximately 16 to 24 inches from the gable end, measure the remaining distance to the edge of the roof and pick 2 tiles that will fit that distance with adequate side-to-side spacing. The spacing may be adjusted between a 1/2 inch to 3/16 of an inch to make the tiles fit properly. Valley. When a valley is reached, slates should be cut to the correct angle to allow for an open or closed valley. These slates are best cut with a circular saw, although they may be cut with a box knife if necessary. It is preferable to use the widest slates available for the slate closest to the center of the valley. Larger slates will allow the installer to keep nails out of the center of the valley, and in addition, it will only require 1 valley slate per course. A combination of the 12-inch and 10-inch tiles is ideal. The portion of the slate that was cut off for the valley cut can be used as a pre-cut hip cut for the hips. Hip and ridge. Once all field slates have been installed, a minimum 6-inch wide piece of non-corrosive metal should be placed over the hips and ridges. The metal should extend at least 3 inches from the center point on each side of the hip or ridge. When installing a hip, DaVinci recommends you use the Boston hip application, which will hide the rib structure so it is not visible from the ground. Use the portion of slate that was cut off for the valley. Lay the pieces on the bottom course as shown, pressing the two slates tight together. The second set of slates should be installed uncut with these outside edges pulled all the way down to the eave of the roof. The installation can proceed to ridge at a 6-inch exposure. A similar application is used for the ridge. The pre-packaged 7-inch hip and ridge should be installed one piece at a time so that the butts of two tiles are adjacent and the inside edges touch. These should be installed with a 6-inch exposure as well. This video is intended to supplement the DaVinci installation instructions, which should be used as your primary source of information. Nothing in this video supersedes any health or safety instructions provided by your employer.